Welcome, everyone. My name is Rachel Bruns, and I'm the Chief Engagement Officer for America's Service Commissions. Thanks so much for joining us for our second of 3 webinars focused on apprenticeship. And really, this is an opportunity for the national service field, AmeriCorps programs, and state service commission to learn more about apprenticeship and related apprenticeship models that hopefully will be an opportunity for more state service commissions and AmeriCorps programs to think about how they can incorporate apprenticeship and or kind of other career pathway models into their AmeriCorps programming. As I noted on our first webinar of this series earlier this summer, I know throughout the webinar today, you may hear language that is very employer and employee focused. So given that all of us on this call that are more from the service field, and we're used to talking about service sites, service opportunities, and service members, I want to encourage all of you to be very open to that language around employers and employees and understand that you might have to do some of the translation of language yourself from when we think about, terms like employee. We're really in our sector talking about AmeriCorps members or service members. When we're say words like employer, we may be talking about service sites or host sites or AmeriCorps programs. So I just want to provide that kind of initial caveat to encourage you all to be thinking about doing that translation on your end in terms of the language that we're talking about. I also want to acknowledge and recognize we have colleagues from the Department of Labor that are joining us on the call today, so they may chime in later during the Q&A with any additional insights as there may be questions, and just encourage folks to ask any questions as we go about the session today using the chat box, or you can also use the raise your hand icon and we'll let you know to unmute your line. We'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on any questions that pop up throughout the session today. So really grateful for Lisa Johnson, who is joining us to share specifically about youth development and registered apprenticeship within the youth apprenticeship space. So I am going to just encourage folks to listen and learn about the Youth Development Accelerator from Lisa. She is getting logged in right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to introduce herself and jump right into the presentation today. Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. I was about 10 minutes early and my internet went out as soon as you started talking, Rachel. So apologies, everybody. I'm Lisa Johnson, the director of the National Institute for Work and Learning at FHI 360. Big mouthful there, a lot of words. We're based out of Washington, D.C., and really happy to be talking with you all today. A lot of our passions of myself and my team align with what I've heard about AmeriCorps and the work that you do. We have a team that focuses on college and career readiness and evaluation, and apprenticeship is something fairly new for us, just the last 2 years that we have tapped into. So excited to have a conversation with you about that today. And in the chat, if you could just put in there, what is a word that you think about or a phrase that you think about with apprenticeship? What does that mean to you? What is it synonymous with? And I know that Rachel mentioned that you had your apprenticeship 101 in June, so this isn't the first that you're hearing about it. Great, so we have trade, we have skills-based learning, training. Great, thanks. Yeah, earning money, Bethany. Pay, okay. Yeah, so I think it's all of these things that you're all talking about in there too. So what we'll do today is I'll give you a little bit of data, some information on the next slide, and walk through apprenticeship in a different way, not a 101 like you had the last time, but thinking about alternatives or different kinds of apprenticeships than what I might have known until just a few years ago. Next slide, there we go. So what we have taken on our team is expanding registered apprenticeships to underserved or under-resourced populations as a way for access into the workforce and as a way of continued learning. So what we'll talk about today is the registered apprenticeship and where are we now and what are some of the innovative approaches that we have seen and some of the things that we're starting. The YDPA, which is Youth Development Practitioner Apprenticeship. And of course, we like our acronyms, so it's just YDPA. And then we'll end with the call to action. And a way to register to explain registered apprenticeship, we have a couple of slides on that, and we will send these to you at the end. So I won't spend a lot of time on the words on the slide, more time on the purpose behind it. And please, along the way, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. All right, so what is it? You've given us some ideas in the chat about what you think about when you think of the terms registered apprenticeship. And I believe Rachel may have acknowledged in my absence that we have a few folks from Department of Labor here, so feel free to jump in if you have any questions or areas that you want to talk about on the way to, please do. So what is it? In some of the simplest terms that we have learned, on the next slide, it is paid job. So people talked about pay, people talked about education, skills training. So the education is a part of it. And then there is a credential. So at the end, a participant receives a nationally recognized credential that are viewed from employers in a positive light, as well as it's certified from the Department of Labor, which really gives people a leg up when on their resumes and in employment, something different to talk about. All right, and this will zip through a bit, but wanted to show you just some of the features. And oftentimes when we started this, we were confused. How is it different from an internship? And these are some of the ways that it does differ from an internship. So it's at least a year. It needs to be certified to be an apprentice is a year of employment. It's structured, there's skills that are created, there's training, there's paid work experience. So a lot of the things that you put in the chat there. And the one thing that we are working on and others have worked on is that the experience itself leads to a college credit, which we know internships can do that as well. And here's some fun little facts from our graphic designers. And this is overall, when we looked at apprenticeship to try to talk to ourselves and others about it, is these are some data from end of 2021. So at that time, there were a little bit more than 800,000 apprentices across the nation. And these just show you some of the starting salaries. And we were, and specifically now look on the employment retention. This for some of the employers that we're working with now, we have noticed that this has helped with retention over some other years that people had apprentices or not apprentices. Where are we now? On the next slide. This chunks out the percentages a little bit differently from the other ones. But again, the end of fiscal year 21, about 40% of the apprentices that were registered are in construction and manufacturing, which aligns. When many of us think of apprenticeship, we think of electrician, we think of plumber, we think of the trades. And I think somebody had trades in the chat. And at that time, there were 11% of the active apprentices were people of color, 86% identified as male, and less than 1% identified as having a disability. So we looked at this information, and on the next couple of slides, we talk about access and equity in apprenticeship. And some of the roadblocks that we've seen, so we saw some of the data, and then we thought, okay, let's dig into this. And what are some of the roadblocks? It's the lack of awareness or those misconceptions of what an apprenticeship is, because it's traditionally been one field or one sector, that there may be limited access, lack of diversity, and the need for support. You all see, or many of you I think would see in your programs, is that wraparound support that it often takes for some of our young people between 18 and 30 to really make sure that they have these other essential needs for them to be successful in the workplace. Next slide, Rachel. And so with that, some of the approaches that we put in the next 2 slides talk about that. So the equity strategies, feeling like it's making sure that the design itself is, so it involving the apprentices and the mentors right up front. It also, recruitment is a way that you can increase equity and diversity into your talent pipelines. The pre-apprenticeship is a way of introducing young people or others into an apprenticeship. So taking a smaller, shorter term experience that might be synonymous with an internship or classroom instruction, that is a piece that could lead to an understanding and awareness of apprenticeship, so that the pre-apprentices can go right into apprenticeship. And again, the support services, ensuring that those supports are there for success in apprenticeship. This slide and the next slide is really specific to the Department of Labor workforce system. So I'll hit it at a high level because this might mean a lot to a lot of you and less to some of you, just depending on the lens that you're coming from. But some of the lingo that we use, so on-the-job training or on-the-job learning, the individual training accounts, on-the-job training contracts through the Department of Labor, there are mechanisms in place that support financially organizations and or the apprentices that are joining organizations. And there's different ways here that we'll share with you about how you could think strategically about braiding or blending funding in order to support an apprentice in multiple ways. So either through the training, the related training instruction, or the supportive services themselves. And this gets really fine-tuned, and some people really need this because it aligns the WIOA requirements. And again, we put in there how this helps to align with some of your outcomes that some of your organizations may have already, and where each of these fits into those measures for your reading pleasure after the session. All right, so all this, and we decided, okay, let's do something different. Let's see what it's like to expand the apprenticeship. So we created the Youth Development Practitioner Apprenticeship. And a few things happened. One is I won't give you my whole life history, but in the early 2000s, I ran a project, the Youth Opportunity Grant, that was funded through the Department of Labor. And at that time, Department of Labor had dollars to invest in professional development of the staff in the field. And during that time, the youth development practitioner became a job in the occupational handbook. And all of the support that came from labor, the training, has led to many of it's about 60% of the people that I worked with at that time are still in the field in some way. So I took that as my own personal experience and others that are in organizations or leading organizations, and then reached out to the young adults that are in our current programs, or at that time were in our current programs, to say, how about this as a career option? And on the next slide, and many of you might hear this in the work that you do, is the young people that are served themselves often want to be that person that helps navigate them, that helped to guide them through where they were when they were 14 to 21. So wanting to give back came out a lot from the young people that we saw. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about this youth voice. We had over 50 participants. Young people talked to us about the curriculum as we were creating it. They said that they really, in our justice involved programs, people that had been incarcerated and came out and were supported, they wanted to give back to the young people so that they could prevent an intervention with the justice system, and or to support those in the same way that had a lived experience like they did, to really shepherd them along the way. It has them serve their own communities. And what we've learned these last couple of years is it really transforms. It transforms the learning experience, and it transforms the confidence in the person that is going through this apprenticeship. I talked a little bit about pre-apprenticeship, and this might be something that you all consider in your own programming. We've created one ourselves. It's 40 hours, and it's that bridge. So the first part is goal setting, teamwork, how to get along with others. What is it like if it's your first job? And those 40 hours of curriculum actually count towards the apprenticeship themselves if they do decide to go in that pathway. If they don't decide to go in that pathway, they receive a digital badge. So they're receiving something, and they have something for their resume, but also some learning through this. The apprenticeship itself is, what is the commitment? It's 165 hours of related training instruction, and to be certified with DOL, it's 2,000 hours, which is basically full-time for a year to be an apprentice. So that's the work part of it. And then the learning part of it is, on the next slide, talks a little bit more about the 165 hours. It is 9 different modules in 29 competencies. When you look at the modules, it is made up of either a 60 to 90 minute weekly facilitated session that we do virtually. We can pull different people from across different organizations to be focusing on the same topic area, and or with a particular organization, and sometimes it's one-on-one. So the related training instruction is small group, and then a lot of it is self-paced. The next slide shows you some of the other methodologies and the activities and how they're divided up. So it is not 165 hours talking to me or to somebody on the team. That's one aspect of it. There are different playlists that we have. There are different videos. There's learning that we send, and then performance tasks so that we're assessing what's being learned along the way. And the group learning and support, the peer, the mentor, the supervisor. To be an apprentice, you have a supervisor like we all do, and then we ask that there's a mentor, somebody different from the direct supervisor that's a buddy that is helping them along the way in their learning, which a lot of organizations set up that way anyway, to have somebody to talk with. And the apprenticeship quest everybody does, and that is they take one of those 9 modules, they think about the components, and they create their own project, and it's real life based on the data, the research, and the discussions, and what's happening on the job, what's happening at work as a youth worker. And we're almost there, and then it'll be some time for questions. So this is a little bit about the roles. So an employer partner could be a youth organization, and we have a few youth organizations that are the employers. So the role for them is to recruit the apprentices. Sometimes it's from their own programs, sometimes it's not. Their role is to employ them, supervise them, pay them, give them the money. And then the support for the on-the-job learning or the related training instruction is that support could be if they have a question, or support could be if the supervisor or mentor says to us as the related training instruction facilitators, how about you spend a little bit more time on this? Or this is a problem that we're struggling with in our organization. Or this apprentice needs a little bit more in this area. That's what the support means there. And on the right side are the items that FHI 360 does in this apprenticeship. Next slide. And once Brian had a video, but it broke in this process. So Brian is lovely. And when we send this out, we'll have Brian's video. How to get involved is some things, and this would really be our discussion for now, or see if anybody has questions to ask in any detail, but ways in which we think about is for this particular program, if bringing in these principles and practices to existing staff as one option. So for the incumbent apprentice, which we have, some of the youth serving organizations have staff that have degrees and have education, but maybe not directly in positive youth development, or they haven't had classroom-based pedagogy. So they have different skill sets, but find that those on the job do not have a professional learning community in the kind of work that they do. So the existing workforce is going through this in partner organizations. So partnering and sponsoring, if you have a participant that may be in a program that you really find interesting and may want to hire them for the work, that could be. We also have some that haven't gone through the full apprenticeship for their staff, but we've created professional development series. We already have the information in the curriculum. It's all been approved through the Department of Labor. So we're able to share that out if needed. So we are gonna, I think, stop here with a quote and some questions, or the next slide gives a little bit of our contact information. Yeah. Questions, reactions, point of clarification.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. So I posted this in the chat, but just to reiterate, if you have any questions for Lisa about any of the information shared, feel free to post those questions or provide comments in the chat, or you can also raise your hand using the raise your hand icon in the reactions tab, and I will call on you to let you know you can unmute your line. So we'll see what questions or comments folks have as folks are thinking of those things. One reflection that I had, Lisa, when you were sharing that slide about roadblocks, just reflecting on our own field within national service and AmeriCorps, I feel like an opportunity for AmeriCorps programs and why I think we would be a good fit to kind of partner with either existing apprenticeship program models like yours or to develop their own, is that AmeriCorps is bringing in often like different fields, right? Like it's not typically construction, but different fields. AmeriCorps programs, I would say, while certainly have our own challenges and barriers, do have a lot of wraparound services that they can offer to potential apprentices and AmeriCorps members, as well as a lot of AmeriCorps programs are quite diverse and do reflect the communities that they serve. So I feel like there's opportunity there to explore, like, how can AmeriCorps programs bring kind of the audiences they're working with to employers and apprenticeship models that could be potentially kind of win-win scenario. So just my own commentary and reflecting on that roadblock slide, which I think is interesting.
And I see Joey's name in there. I also see Lorenzo, and both have been at Department of Labor and have talked with me about this in some shape. So if there's anything that I left out or anything that you wanted to add for your colleagues, please feel free.
Yes, absolutely. And I see Kristen in Maine has their hand raised. So Kristen, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Oh, my camera's on. Excellent. Hi. So I sort of like reflecting back what I heard. maybe check for clarity more than a specific question, but in the last webinar, the representative from DOL talked about an apprenticeship being employer driven. So kind of the traditional model is like the construction company runs the apprenticeship program and provides the opportunity and pays for everyone. But in your model, you're not the direct employer. It's almost like a host site model where you're working with the host sites who are the employers, and you hold that registered apprenticeship, provide the training and support. So I've been thinking sort of like us as a state service commission, is that a role we should play where we hold the registered apprenticeship to enable more smaller organizations maybe to participate? So does that sound accurate? And maybe what does that look like, that partnership development there with those employers and placements look like?
That is a great question. I'll give a couple of examples so that we could flesh that out a little bit. In the city of Los Angeles is engaging in this apprenticeship. So FHI is the sponsor. The city of Los Angeles is the employer of record, and they have 10 existing staff. I think it's going to be 15 actually, existing staff that are working with young people in their youth centers, their workforce centers, America's Job Centers. So that's the role. The existing staff is going through the learning. They're the apprentices, and they're paid. So they're receiving the dollars from the city of Los Angeles. We have an agreement with the foundation. What the foundation did is they gave dollars to 10 youth serving organizations. Those 10 youth serving organizations are the host sites. That's where the employees are, where they sponsor. We run the training for them, and they get paid directly from the grantees. The funder gives the money to the locals pay the apprentice.
So I think to your question, and this is me also kind of working through this, I think for some commissions on the call and AmeriCorps programs, it may be something to explore specifically with Lisa's organization. Do you have youth serving organizations that might want to be partners with them in offering this youth apprenticeship program, either for AmeriCorps members and or potentially even staff at those organizations? But I do think that there's probably something around having AmeriCorps members participate either as like the pre-apprenticeship piece and or possibly also like part of their AmeriCorps service is related, it applies to the apprenticeship, but there might be additional aspects above and beyond their AmeriCorps service. So that could be something to explore. And then to your other point around like what role commissions could play, there could be maybe not this specific, but another model that commissions explore around like an apprenticeship model for AmeriCorps members that's maybe more, I don't know, generic to a field in your state, public service potentially, AmeriCorps program directors, nonprofit sector. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud here. So that's those are the kind of things I'm thinking about. Jeff, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, just sort of gives a little context. Broadly speaking, there are sort of two basic structures that an apprenticeship program can take. There's what's called an individual program. That would be where a specific employer becomes the sponsor of an apprenticeship program just for their own business needs, that company. So that would be like Purdue Farms having an apprenticeship program that is exclusively for their talent development pipeline. What we're hearing about here is what's referred to as a group program. A group program is simply something where there is an entity, either a union or a non-union entity or a workforce intermediary, that is the administrator of an apprenticeship program. And what they in turn will do, they will go out and sign on employers to be what are called participating employers of the program. So while the sponsor of record in this case might be Lisa's organization, they have individual employers that commit to say, yes, I want to be part of your program. I want to be able to have the opportunity to bring on apprentices that I will train on the job utilizing your guidance, while they will get related instruction that'll be provided by you as the sponsor. Just want to give that little sort of definitional context just to hopefully clarify it for folks.
Very helpful. Thanks, Jeff. Other questions or comments? Lisa, as you know, about, well, I shouldn't say about, a large, I would say, section of the AmeriCorps field is youth serving in some capacity. So I do think that there's probably a number of commissions or programs that might be interested in kind of better understanding how they might partner with your program. I assume reaching out to you on the contact information here is the best next step. But curious if there's anything else you would offer folks in terms of like their interest in exploring how this might connect with their programs.
Yeah, I would say that some of the AmeriCorps members themselves, if they're coming working at youth serving organizations, it's a professional development opportunity for them for that learning, as some of the locations don't have the staff capacity, the bandwidth, because of how busy the organizations can be. So going through this could give them both a cohort of learning about youth serving organizations. And we have already gone through the process of registering this with Department of Labor. So what our interest is to get this out and to not have people to go through that same process, and that the certifications are there, the competencies are there, the assessments are there. So if it is of interest, feel free to reach out and I can share with you just the easiest ways. Or if you have local employers that want to do this, I can help to navigate, to give you some ideas of what it was we did, what we went through, how we did it, but we're happy to share. One of our goals is that people that are already in the field working with young people, that they get the recognition for the hard work that this is and what it takes to do. So the more that we can get these kinds of certifications out there, it elevates the field, it professionalizes the field, and people really deserve the respect and appreciation. And sometimes for us in the human services sector, we get oh, that's such a nice thing to do. Well, it is really hard work. It is very, very hard work to do. And if we can have people, and it is great work, and people should be commended for that. But if there's some way that collectively as a nation, we can pull this together, we can talk about the field with some data and say, oh yes, they have gone through this, this, and this. Like, that is one of our intentions, to really keep alive what Department of Labor started with an investment in 2000 of creating this job, giving it a title, giving it an occupational code, and making sure that people are trained and equipped to work with our young people, simultaneously giving young people a career opportunity and that option to be that. So those are our two areas of interest. And if they are yours, if we can help you in any way, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm just thinking more too about maybe some other forums that we could have you connect with others in our network, or potentially maybe not our network directly, but other networks we partner with specifically. I'm thinking about like after school programs and out of school time programs that we collaborate closely with throughout the country. So that might be something for us to talk about more as well, where there's a lot of AmeriCorps presence, or for a lot of state commissions partnering with out of school time, after school programs around youth service and service learning specific types of initiatives.
Great. And thanks, Jeff and Lorenzo, for your kind words, and that I still look so young that I couldn't have possibly started this 23 years ago with you. So do you. So thanks for that.
Are there any other questions or comments for Lisa regarding this information? And I will plug again from our last call, a couple of resources that we shared. One, and I will send this out with the recording and related materials, is the pre-apprenticeship guide that Service Year Alliance created. So that's a great resource that goes more in depth around pre-apprenticeships for those that are interested in exploring that further. And then also share the toolkit that was created by Serve Colorado regarding the AmeriCorps program that they have developed that is an apprenticeship model specific to public health and community health worker model. So encourage you to check out those resources. Again, not specific to today's session, but giving more information around apprenticeship models that might be of interest for folks. Well, I don't see other questions, so I just want to thank Lisa again for sharing all this great information and for everyone for joining us today. We will share the recording and related resources out with everyone in a follow-up email and encourage folks interested in this specific model to reach out to Lisa to learn more. And I anticipate you'll have some interest from either commissions that are kind of representing AmeriCorps programs in their state, or some individual youth serving organizations that are interested in learning more on how they can participate. So thanks so much, Lisa. I appreciate your time today and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.